Hey, Brittany. So, welcome to Jeff's Podcast Academy. It's really great to have you here as an amazing expert. I just want to, ask you, like, how was your journey from, being a virtual assistant to a podcast assistant and to podcast producer and launch expert? So, please tell a little bit about that, how your journey of being here right now started.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jeffrey, for having me on your show. I'm excited to be here. So, my journey started. First off, I am a mom. And so my journey started because of my son. I wanted a job that would allow me to work and bring in money for my family and also allow me to be home with my son.
Mm.
And
Cool.
so I came across a course that taught all about virtual assisting. I actually wasn't really familiar with this massive online space of, freelancers and service providers. And, I have a background in digital marketing, but I don't know, this whole world of entrepreneurs in the freelance space was just so new to me. It was right at the start of COVID. So I'm in the US, and we had gone into lockdown. And that's when I decided to invest in the virtual assistant course. And so I was at home, it was a lot of free time, and I just dove right in. And within a month, I landed my first client. And at that time, I thought I wanted to be a social media manager.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the route I was going to take. I didn't even know podcast managers, producers were a thing. And so then after I got my first virtual assistant / social media client, I quickly realized that social media is just not my cup of tea. I didn't like just the hamster wheel that everybody talks about. I feel like you just constantly need to be on.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I needed to just make a pivot. I switched to Pinterest management, learned the ins and outs of Pinterest. And then one of my Pinterest clients, had her own podcast.
Mm.
And so I remember she mentioned something to me about her podcast manager. And I was like, what? That's a thing? Like, I've always loved podcasts. I've always listened to podcasts, but I never knew there was a whole back end to podcasting. And so it's like a light bulb went off and a whole new world was open for me. And so that's when I dove into a podcast management course, learned all the things. And yeah, since then, things have moved at like lightning speed. I feel like I've taken on several clients, worked with a wide variety of clients. Right now, I specifically work with online coaches in the beauty, wellness, and fitness industries. And yeah, I'm obsessed with this industry. I love it. It's so fun.
Awesome. That's really great. So, I just wanted to get a little bit insights on you said you did a lot of courses, right? Like, for example, in the virtual assistant and podcast manager. It would be great if you could name a few. I mean, for a lot of people who are in your stage and want to start, I think that would be a great start for them to get on with it.
Yeah, of course. So the virtual assistant, that was with Michaela Quinn, and that was Overwhelmed to Overbooked. A phenomenal course. I would not be where I am today without her and that course. And then the podcast manager course, it's the podcast manager program, and that's with Lauren Wrighton. And I feel like
Yeah.
everybody in the podcast industry should know Lauren. She's phenomenal.
Yeah. Even attended one of her webinars actually. I saw she was talking about a lot of things. Got it. I mean, because yesterday I was actually interviewing someone and I asked them, like, being a virtual assistant, most people get the thought that virtual assistants don't do a lot. They do a lot of things for low cost. That's what the branding and the position people did with the name. So I guess, I think it's just for me personally, people can actually upgrade that name to something else more specific rather than just virtual assistant, maybe social media manager or something, because they excel at a lot of things, but still not getting recognized for a lot. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why. Cool. So
And another
yeah, please
Sorry
go
to
on.
interrupt you, but just so podcasters know when you're looking,
Hmm.
I just like you said, virtual assistants, they do a lot of stuff for a lower price. And so
Yeah.
I feel like if you have a lower budget, Absolutely. You know, you can hire on a virtual assistant. I feel like the VAs, their experience level, you know, a lot of times they're newer. They don't have a lot of experience in that industry. Whereas a podcast manager, you know, they've really niched down. They've worked in their industry. They're experts in that industry. So it is going to be a higher price point, but you are going to be hiring on somebody that is more experienced.
Got it.
That's the way I see it.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So, you know, the thing is, when you mentioned that you want to take on the podcast manager course, so I actually want to reach out to podcast managers to see what they do. So when I searched hashtag podcast manager, literally a lot of people popped up, lots and lots of people popped up. And so it might be really hard. I mean, podcasts are growing, but still it might be really hard to get clients when there's a lot of competition. But you mentioned you actually niche down to just two sets of people, right? So coaches who are into fitness and wellness, and you know, so in some other than that one as well. So any reason why you went on super focused rather than having a wide range of clients where you could have actually got a lot more from this one? Any reason?
My main reason is that my background is in the beauty and wellness industry. 10 years ago, right out of college, I was a professional makeup artist. And so, and then I managed a spa. That industry is just what I know. And so I feel like, you know, I could connect with those podcasters who just connection wise, I feel like I can, you know, not only provide podcasting tips, but I also know their industry. So I feel like I can help them with content creation because I know what their audience wants to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's clever. That's clever. So, any, I just want to ask, any funny thing that happened during your spa days, like, you know, with makeup stuff, any funny things that happened that you want to mention?
Oh gosh, Jeffrey. I don't know. I mean, I can't think of anything right off the bat, but I got out of that because I realized I'm not the biggest fan of touching people. You know, as a makeup artist, I was constantly touching people, and I got some people where their skin wasn't the nicest, and it grossed me out after a while. So I was like, I got to get out of this. So
but
that's why I'm in the podcast industry, because I don't touch people like this.
That's interesting. Great. So, okay. You know, I just want to dive into some of the things that you mentioned previously. Is that you actually came to know the ins and outs of Pinterest, right? Like when you were actually learning all this. I'm really curious. I mean, like, how do you think that Pinterest can actually help in the podcasting? So one thing I think a lot of audience would probably know is that you create a graphic and you put it on Pinterest, add the links and stuff. It will probably be there. But let's just talk in case of engagement wise, let's say pinning other people or creating a small group or something like that on Pinterest. Any tips that you want to give, something that's not already said too much?
As far as engagement goes, I wouldn't necessarily say, for me, Pinterest is a powerhouse in the form of, I mean, SEO purposes. You know, I have clients that their pins from 2 years ago, they're still getting thousands of views, and they're still landing lead calls from, you know, pins that they pinned 2 years ago, but they're still circulating. So, you know, just like with any other, you know, podcasting or YouTube, it is a fantastic form of SEO. And if your audience is on there, you know, I tell everybody that Pinterest is more, I think, geared towards women. I don't think the male demographic is necessarily on Pinterest as much, but it really comes down to your audience. And if your audience is on Pinterest, I mean, just really pairing that with your podcast, with SEO purposes, you know, it could just be evergreen content.
So it's like, so the SEO purpose, like, you know, create a graphic and do something like that. We can do as simple as that. Anything complicated that we need to do?
Right. No. And I mean, just like with anything else, it can be more complicated. I know now there's idea pins and there's video pins, and there's always new things coming out, but no, it can be as simple as creating just a pin with the graphic and a really good SEO description, and it will circulate for years.
Got it. So, you mentioned actually like some of your clients actually getting still 1,000 a lot of views from the Pinterest that, through their podcasting. So this is kind of an optional question you can, or you don't, you can't, you don't want to, sorry, you can answer or you don't want to answer. That's completely under your, thoughts. So do you want to like give any one of your clients case studies, like, tell them like, this shows the how much powerful the podcasting place is, just like any example that you can say about a client or something like that.
You mean any client or somebody on Pinterest?
Any client, like someone that you actually helped to grow to another level, so how podcasting actually helped them. So I just want to explore the power of podcasting to people, why they should start it, in a meaningful sense at least.
Yeah, I know for I'll just say the latest launch I did. She isn't in my niche industry. She actually she helps people in the sports industry. Okay. And I think her podcast is so fantastic because it's so specific. And so she is a business coach for people in the sports industry, but her podcast is she interviews different careers in the sports industry. And she does 2 episodes a week. So the first episode is she goes behind the scenes of their career, and they explain how they got into it, what they do, where they see the future going. And then the second episode that week is she has them talk about the charity that they are involved with. A lot of sports, they're involved with the charity. And so she goes into that charity. And I think this show, she's just brought so much awareness to each one of these sports careers, as well as the charities that they're involved with. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I love to see this kind of aspect, because not only is she growing her business, growing her audience, and bringing in new leads, but it's also just bringing so much awareness to the industry and the charities. It's just, it's been great to watch it evolve. And I know a lot of the guests that she brings on, they say that there's not many podcasts like this, or they wish that they would have had a podcast like that when they were starting in that industry, because they're learning so much from her.
Okay. So ultimately, I think, one of the things that you always mention is niching it down, like to one particular section. So, okay, let's just take for my example, like I am kind of doing podcasts for podcasters who want to start podcasts and who already have the podcast. Is there any way to niche more down from that? Any way at all?
Oh, goodness. Yes, I think you definitely could niche down more and get more specific on the type of podcaster. So like podcast for personal development podcasters, or podcasting for crime podcast, or, I think you could definitely niche down even more, but I think what you do is fantastic. It is definitely niche.
Yeah. Great. So, I mean, if we go for like, podcast for a specific type of podcast, I mean, tons of branches would already go out. So I guess that's really great stuff to do. Awesome. So I do just a couple of things before, going on to the last section is I always ask this question as like an out of the box stuff. So is it like morning or evening there? What time is it around?
It is 11:20 it's morning, but it's like lunchtime.
Okay. So my question is, who was actually the last person that you made smile yesterday?
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Probably my son. I'll be honest with you, I don't come in contact with a lot of people because during the day it's just me and my son and my husband. But yeah, I guess my son, we always make each other laugh. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. The reason why I was always asked is that there was this one guy who actually, when I started it out, he asked me this question, and I was like, I really couldn't answer because I mean, like, I kind of felt like, okay, I mean, like, what am I doing? I can't even make a single person laugh, or I went into a lot of thoughts. But yeah, I think, coming COVID, it stopped a lot of things. But still, before that, I think this actually gave me like a thinking perspective question. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask.
Awesome. Oh, I love that.
Great. So yeah, just a couple of things before going into the last section is so there are lots of news that comes out for each section. So let's say, for example, you are doing crime podcast or you are doing a business podcast. You can get the news of the particular niche from various news channels or magazines or anywhere at all. It's possible. But what do you think of some of the great places where they could get the news for podcasting itself? Now, one thing I knew is Pod News. That is one place where they give out news about podcasting in the space itself. So, any other platforms do you think that can help us? And any tips that you can give us to grab those things, like to create content from anything at all?
Oh, I get my news from Pod News as well. I would say, I mean, honestly, I get a lot of stuff from Lauren's course, from the Podcast Manager Program course. I mean, I think that's fantastic, is finding a mentor or somebody that can help you. Also, Facebook groups, I think, are phenomenal. Finding a podcast specific Facebook group. I know there's a few that I am a part of and love is, let's see, female. Oh, I can't think of the name exactly. I think it's female podcasters or something like that. But there, I mean, you can search and find them. But I mean, those are fantastic, especially for podcasters that have a question and they, want to ask a community. Yeah, I guess those are my two things. I mean, Pod News, finding a mentor, and getting in a Facebook group community to help ask all your questions.
Got it. And I think one thing that popped my mind is Buzzsprout as well. I mean, they do a little bit, community things like, putting some news on it, but a lot of news that, get from Pod News as well. I mean, it's really an amazing thing. I'm trying to contact that guy so that, I could also get him on the show. He just picks out a lot of great, amazing information from everywhere. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
So just wanted to ask you one final question is like, as a podcast manager, okay, what do you think would be like three major skills? Now, these three major skills, let's say, something that shouldn't people like always hearing. Okay, it's something like my mantra where you can find everything on Google. Whatever I'm asking can be found on Google, but I just want to get an answer which is not on Google. Just really weird. So yeah, anything that you, in your experience, top three things as skills
for a podcast manager?
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely communication. I don't know if you're familiar with Voxer, but I provide unlimited communication with my clients through Voxer. So if they have a question, I'm available to answer it. Patience, because I mean, with editing and getting all of the content that you need from a client, sometimes they can be very early with sending you stuff, they can be late. So I think just patience and working with them to find a good rhythm is fantastic. And then also just the willingness to want to learn and grow, because I mean, this industry, it's growing tremendously and it will forever be changing and evolving. And so I think wanting to just change and evolve with it and learn, constantly be in a learning state. You have to be willing to do that.
Yeah, so true. And one of the things that you mentioned, like being in patience, I think podcast managers or any business for that matter, when they're starting out to get the first client, they may be really too fast forward with like, did you send the money or did you do this and did you do that? They may be doing a lot of that. So just final touch upon do any client tactics that you want to use like with your patients, so that you won't screw up the entire communication process. Any tips that you want to give?
No, I mean, my biggest thing is with Voxer, I just tell my clients, make sure you have like your Voxer notifications on, because if I send a message, it could be a week until I hear from a client, and then I've got 2 days to scramble to get something together. So I think just make sure you have your communication notifications on with the podcast manager or the virtual assistant you're working with, so it can be just quick communication.
Got it. That makes sense. Awesome. So, Brittany, any questions that you want to ask me? Tables turned.
I have a quick question that I'm interested. What would you like to see from the podcast industry in 2022?
2022. Oh, we are in 2021. Okay. I actually thought we were just going to 2021. Damn. Yeah. I'm still stuck in 2020. Okay. The one thing I want to see is a lot of podcasters, they're actually putting out this normal content. So let's say, for example, how to do a podcast, how to start a podcast. I think they aren't putting out a lot into the nuances. Let's say, when you're interviewing, how do you know your guest is bored? I don't know, a lot of people are actually talking about that. How do you know that sometimes the internet is cut off but you are only talking? How do you know the guest is asleep? Because I've experienced that. One time I was interviewing a person, the guest was literally asleep, and he was asleep before even I was starting the interview. He didn't even wake up. So I don't even know what happened. So I have a really lot, bad things that happen. So I think those small thing nuances, if people could try to put it, I'm doing my best trying to put it out. So if that they could do that as well, because experienced people can do that, then it would be great. So that's one thing that I'm just trying to expect from this industry. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That would be great to see. I've never had somebody fall asleep or experience that. That's hilarious.
Awesome. So Brittany, this has been really great. Thank you so much again for hopping onto the show, and it would be great to know where people can find you and ask about you. And I know everything's in update right now. It'd be great to know when people can actually hear back from you. So yeah, places can see you as well.
Yeah. So my new and improved website just went live. So you can find that at BrittanyCues.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Brittany.Cues and Facebook as well. I'm not on social media too much, but yeah, feel free to find me there and reach out.
Awesome. So yeah, so guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode.